The exile. The declaration came without warning. In the grand chambers of the Galactic Council, the 7 sovereign species voted unanimously. Earth and all human colonies were hereby excommunicated from galactic society. The official record cited unpredictable aggression, genetic instability, and cultural incompatibility as the justifications. The unofficial truth was far simpler: fear. Humanity had accomplished in 3 centuries what had taken other species millennia. From primitive radio signals to quantum entanglement networks, from chemical rockets to gravity manipulation drives, from tribal warfare to unified planetary governance. The curve of human innovation wasn't linear, it was exponential, and that terrified the ancient powers that had grown comfortable in their supremacy. Admiral Elena Rice stood on the observation deck of the UES Intrepid, watching as the last human diplomatic vessel departed from Axis Mundi, the massive space station that served as the Council's seat of power. Her weathered face remained impassive, but her eyes burned with quiet fury. "They've given us 5 standard cycles to withdraw all assets and personnel from Council space," her aide reported. "Any human vessel found outside Sol's heliosphere after that deadline will be considered hostile and destroyed." Elena nodded. "Begin the recall. All ships, all outposts, all colonies. Protocol Homecoming is now in effect." The Great Retreat, as historians would later call it, was humanity's most remarkable logistical achievement to date. Over 70 established colonies, hundreds of outposts, thousands of ships, and millions of people, all converging back to the Sol system in an orderly, methodical withdrawal. Not a single soul was left behind, not a single valuable asset abandoned. If the Council expected chaos and disarray, they were disappointed. On Earth, the initial reaction was outrage, followed by fear. For generations, humanity had built its economy around galactic trade. Rare materials, advanced technologies, cultural exchanges, all suddenly severed. Analysts predicted economic collapse within months, starvation within a year, and societal breakdown soon after. They were wrong. President Kwan addressed the United Earth Congress 3 days after the exile began. Her speech was brief but resolute. "They believe they have sentenced us to a slow death. Instead, they have given us the gift of independence. We will not merely survive this exile. We will transcend it." The adaptation protocols went into immediate effect. Rationing was implemented globally, but with mathematical precision and absolute fairness that prevented hoarding or black markets. Advanced fabrication technologies, previously restricted due to Council regulations, were deployed across all industrial sectors. The educational system was completely restructured, emphasizing innovation and problem-solving above all else. Most importantly, Project Phoenix was initiated, a classified program that would harness humanity's greatest resource, its ingenuity. 20 years passed. The Council gradually forgot about the troublesome species they had banished to a single star system. Occasional surveillance probes reported nothing of concern. A civilization struggling to maintain its infrastructure, limited spaceflight, energy constraints. Exactly what they had expected. What the probes didn't detect were the vast underground manufacturing complexes on Mars, the antimatter refineries hidden in Jupiter's cloud bands, or the research stations buried in the ice of Neptune's moons. They didn't detect the quantum communication network that operated in dimensional spaces the Council had never even theorized. And they certainly didn't detect the Shadow Fleet, vessels constructed with materials that absorbed rather than reflected scanning beams, powered by drives that left no energy signature. Admiral Rice, now in her 70s, but preserved by life extension technologies developed during the exile, stood on another observation deck. This time, she overlooked the Phoenix shipyards orbiting Venus, an installation that officially didn't exist. "The Shadow Fleet is complete," reported Admiral Takahashi, her former aide and now the fleet's commander. 120 vessels, from corvettes to dreadnoughts, all incorporating the Phantom Drive system. "And the crews?" Elena asked. "All volunteers, all top of their class. The neural enhancement procedures were successful across the board. Every officer and specialist can now process tactical information at speeds that would have been impossible 20 years ago. Elena nodded with satisfaction. And our intelligence network. Fully operational. Our stealth observers have been deployed to all major council worlds. We have ears in their military commands, their economic ministries, even their personal communications. Excellent. Now we wait. The waiting didn't last long. The first signs of trouble in council space appeared 3 years later. A mysterious pathogen began affecting the Volaks, one of the 7 sovereign species. Their neural lattices, the organic equivalent of a central nervous system, began degrading without apparent cause. Their scientists were baffled. Their leaders were desperate. Simultaneously, the Krell hegemony, another founding member of the Council, began experiencing catastrophic failures in their superluminal communication network. Star systems that had been linked instantaneously for millennia suddenly found themselves isolated, relying on physical couriers to transmit critical information. Their economy, built entirely on information exchange, teetered on collapse. The Council scrambled to address these crises, failing to notice the pattern emerging. By the time the Zoom Collective lost control of their automated defense grid, and the Meridani Concordat discovered their terraforming systems were malfunctioning, it was too late. The sophisticated cyber attacks have been tailored specifically to each species' technological vulnerabilities, executed by intrusion programs far more advanced than anything in Council space. In the chambers of the Galactic Council, once the scene of humanity's banishment, panic now reigned. Grand Marshal Jantar of the Meridani slammed his crystalline appendage against the circular table. These attacks are coordinated. We must identify the aggressor and respond with overwhelming force. High Speaker Valona of the Volaks spoke through her translator, her voice weak from the neural degradation affecting her species. Our intelligence analysts have found no evidence pointing to any known civilization. This technology is beyond even our theoretical understanding. The debate raged for days, accusations flying between old allies. Meanwhile, the attacks continued, escalating in both frequency and severity. Critical infrastructure began failing across Council space. Food distribution networks collapsed. Power generation systems went offline. For the first time in thousands of years, the mighty Galactic Council faced an existential crisis. Then the harvesters arrived. They came from the intergalactic void, massive biomechanical entities that defied conventional classification. Neither fully organic nor fully mechanical, they consumed everything in their path, breaking down matter at the atomic level and absorbing the energy released. They didn't communicate. They didn't negotiate. They simply devoured. The Council's defense fleets engaged the first harvester at the edge of the Krell system. Over 300 warships, representing the most advanced military technology in known space, opened fire simultaneously. The harvester absorbed the energy of their weapons, grew larger, and proceeded to dismantle the fleet piece by piece. Similar reports came from across Council space. The harvesters were unstoppable, their numbers increasing with each world consumed. Evacuation orders were issued for dozens of systems, creating masses of refugees with nowhere to go. The Council, once the supreme authority in the galaxy, found itself helpless against this cosmic horror. In their desperation, they looked toward the Forbidden Zone, the Sol system, home to the species they had banished decades ago. Could the humans have developed something, anything, that might help against this threat? Pride wrestled with survival instinct, and survival won. A Council delegation, led by Grand Marshal Jantar himself, prepared to breach the quarantine around human space. Their mission was clear: beg for help, offer anything in return. As their diplomatic vessel approached the edge of the Sol system, they braced for the primitive defenses they expected to encounter. Instead, they found themselves surrounded by ships unlike anything they had ever seen. Sleek, dark vessels that seemed to bend light around them, appearing and disappearing from sensors at will. A transmission came through on all frequencies, in perfect galactic standard. Council vessel, this is Admiral Sorensen of the Earth Defense Force. State your purpose or be escorted out of sovereign human space. Grand Marshal Jantar swallowed his pride. We come seeking audience with your leaders. The galaxy faces an existential threat. We request humanity's assistance. There was a long pause before the reply came. Follow our escort precisely. Any deviation will be considered hostile. As the council vessel was guided deeper into the system, the delegates gazed out in shock at what they saw. The Sol system was transformed. Massive ring structures encircled Venus and Mars. Space elevators connected Earth to enormous orbital platforms. Fleets of ships, thousands strong, moved in perfect coordination. Dyson swarms surrounded the sun, harvesting energy on a scale that made the Council's technology look primitive by comparison. This was not the struggling civilization their probes had reported. This was a technological superpower that had flourished in isolation. Perhaps because of it, the Council delegation was brought to Olympus Station, a massive construct orbiting Earth at the L1 Lagrange point. There, they faced a panel of human leaders, including the aging but still commanding presence of Admiral Elena Reyes. "So," Elena said, her voice cold but controlled, "after casting us out, after condemning our species to what you thought would be a slow death, you come to us for salvation. The irony is not lost on us." Grand Marshal Jantar bowed his head. "We acknowledge our error in judgment. The threat we face. The harvesters. Yes, we know all about them." Elena gestured, and a holographic display appeared, showing detailed scans of the entities, their movement patterns, their internal structures. "We've been monitoring them since they first entered this galaxy 3 years ago." "How? Your system is isolated. Your technology should be primitive." Elena smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "The Council has never understood humanity. You saw our rapid advancement as a threat rather than an opportunity. You feared what we might become, so you tried to contain us. But constraint breeds innovation. Isolation breeds self-reliance, and in your arrogance, you gave us the one thing we needed most: freedom from your restrictions." The human leaders exchanged glances, and President Isolde Chen nodded almost imperceptibly. Admiral Rice continued, "We will help you fight the harvesters, not for the Council, but for the innocent beings across the galaxy who never chose to banish us. But understand this, when this crisis is over, the old order is finished. Humanity will take its rightful place among the stars, not as supplicants, but as equals. Those are our terms." The Council delegates, faced with extinction, had no choice but to agree. As they departed with humanity's preliminary defenses against the harvesters, Grand Marshal Jantar turned to High Speaker Valona. "I fear we have not prevented our downfall," he said quietly. "We have merely traded one form of it for another." The return. The harvester bearing down on Meridian Prime was twice the size of any previously encountered. The planet below, home to 80 billion souls, and the ancestral seat of the Meridani Concordat, had already begun emergency evacuations, but everyone knew the truth. Barely 10% of the population could be saved before the entity arrived. The combined Council defense fleet, 3,000 ships strong, maintained formation. They had implemented the human-designed shield modifications, which had proven somewhat effective in previous engagements, but against a harvester of this magnitude. The commanders exchanged solemn glances across their communication screens. This would be their last stand. "Energy spike," called out a sensor officer on the Meridani flagship. "The harvester is accelerating its approach." Grand Admiral Killen of the Meridani steeled himself. "All ships, prepare to engage. For the Concordat. For the Council." Before the order to fire could be given, a spatial distortion appeared directly between the fleet and the approaching harvester. The fabric of space-time itself seemed to fold inward, creating a swirling vortex of dark energy. Council sensors went haywire, unable to process what they were witnessing. From this impossible aperture emerged a vessel of breathtaking scale, a midnight black dreadnought that dwarfed even the largest Council warships. Along its hull, lines of blue energy pulsed in rhythmic patterns. It bore no visible weapons, no conventional drive systems, yet its mere presence seemed to distort gravity around it. More spatial rifts appeared, and more human vessels emerged. Dozens, then hundreds. They arranged themselves in a formation that to the Council tacticians seemed bizarre, almost ritualistic in its geometric precision. "This is Admiral Y. Shen of the UES Prometheus," came a transmission from the massive dreadnought. "Council forces, withdraw to minimum safe distance. Harvester engagement is imminent." Grand Admiral Killen bristled at being ordered about in Meridani space, but curiosity overrode pride. "Acknowledged, Prometheus. We will observe from Formation Delta." As the Council fleet repositioned, the human vessels initiated what could only be described as a dance, moving in coordinated patterns that seemed to weave the very fabric of space around them. Energy began flowing between the ships, creating a lattice of power that encircled the Harvester. Aboard the Council flagship, stunned silence gave way to exclamations of disbelief as their sensors registered what was happening. The human vessels weren't attacking the Harvester with conventional weapons. They were manipulating fundamental forces, creating a cascading quantum field that isolated the entity from the rest of spacetime. "Impossible," muttered the Zoom science officer. "They're generating a controlled dimensional boundary. The theoretical energy requirements would be." The Harvester, sensing the threat, lashed out with tendrils of destructive energy. The attacks simply vanished where they met the quantum field, converted and absorbed into the growing matrix. The human ships tightened their formation, the energy flows intensifying. Admiral Y. Shen's voice came through again, calm and measured. "Initiating phase shift in 3, 2, 1. A flash of light, brighter than a supernova yet somehow contained, erupted from the human fleet. When it faded, the Harvester was simply gone. Not destroyed, not broken apart, completely removed from this plane of existence. Grand Admiral Killen found his voice first. What did you do to it?" "Dimensional displacement," Admiral Wei replied. "We shifted it into a pocket universe where it can consume only what we provide. A prison, if you will, tailored to its nature." Across Council space, similar scenes played out. Human fleets appeared through their mysterious rifts, engaged Harvesters with their reality warping technology, and removed the threats with surgical precision. Within 2 standard weeks, the crisis that had brought the mighty Council to its knees was resolved by the very species they had cast aside. The political fallout was immediate. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session, but this time, humans sat at the table, not as petitioners, but as saviors. President Chen led the human delegation, flanked by Admirals Reyes, Takahashi, and Wei. "The Harvester threat has been contained," President Chen stated, her voice carrying easily through the vast chamber. "But understand, contained, not eliminated. They exist in dimensional pockets that require constant maintenance and monitoring. Humanity will shoulder this burden, but we require certain accommodations in return." High Counselor Vexmar of the Zoom leaned forward. "Name your price, humans. We are prepared to offer substantial reparations for our misjudgment." President Chen smiled. "We don't want reparations, Counselor. We want recognition. The ban on human expansion is lifted, effective immediately. Human technology will no longer be classified as restricted. Human representatives will sit on all Council committees with full voting rights." Several counselors began to protest, but Chen raised her hand. "These are not requests. These are statements of fact. The galaxy has changed. The old hierarchies died the moment you came to us for salvation." She gestured, and Admiral Takahashi activated a holographic display showing the hundreds of human outposts that had already been established throughout Council space during the exile. Hidden bases, research stations, and colony seeds that had operated in complete secrecy for decades. We never truly left, Chen continued. While your probes observed a struggling species confined to one system, we were exploring dimensions your science hasn't named yet. While you believed us technologically stunted, we were developing means to fold space itself. You thought you were containing a threat. In reality, you removed the only constraints on our development: your regulations, your traditions, your fear of change. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity hadn't just survived the exile. They had transcended it, evolving into something beyond the Council's comprehension. Grand Marshal Jantar, who had led the original plea for help, stood slowly. President Chen, you speak of partnership, yet your tone suggests conquest. If humanity has indeed surpassed us so thoroughly, what need have you for the Council at all? Why not simply take what you want? Elena Reyes stepped forward then, her aged face solemn. Because that's not who we are, Marshal. Despite everything, despite the suffering your decision caused, we remain human. We could have watched as the harvesters consumed you all. We could have emerged afterward to claim an empty galaxy. That would have been easy. She looked around the chamber, meeting the alien gazes one by one. The hard path is coexistence. The hard path is forgiveness. The hard path is building something better, together, than either of us could create alone. And if we refuse your terms, asked a Krull representative. Admiral Wei Shen answered, his voice soft, but carrying an unmistakable edge. Then we leave. We take our harvester containment technologies with us. We seal our borders with dimensional barriers you cannot penetrate. And we let you face the next crisis alone. The vote that followed was unanimous. In the decades that followed, the galaxy transformed. Human innovation, unleashed throughout Council space, sparked a renaissance across all member species. The dimensional sciences, once the exclusive domain of humanity, became a field of collaborative research. The phantom drive technology revolutionized travel, shrinking the galaxy that had relied on static gates and predetermined routes. Most significantly, the Council itself evolved from a hierarchy dominated by the ancient sovereign species into a true democracy of stars. New civilizations, previously deemed too primitive for membership, were welcomed into the fold. The old practices of species classification and technological restriction were abolished. The Lena Rays lived just long enough to see the completion of the Concordance, a massive space station at the galaxy's core that replaced Axis Mundi as the seat of galactic governance. Unlike its predecessor, it was designed with input from every member species, a physical manifestation of the new order. In her final public address, delivered from the station's Grand Assembly Hall, the Admiral who had witnessed humanity's exile and orchestrated its triumphant return spoke words that would be enshrined in the Concordance's foundation. The Council believed they were punishing us with exile. Instead, they gave us the stars. Not as conquerors, not as subjects, but as explorers free to chart our own course. Remember this lesson. All who come after. True strength lies not in dominance, but in resilience. Not in isolation, but in connection. Not in fear of difference, but in celebration of it. As the new Galactic Concordance embarked on its mission of cooperative exploration and development, humanity stood not above or apart, but alongside. The species once deemed too dangerous to join galactic society had become its salvation and its conscience, proof that even in the darkest exile, the seeds of a brighter future could take root and flourish. The band that was meant to contain humanity had instead unleashed its greatest potential. The exile intended to weaken had only made it stronger, and the galaxy, despite all odds, was better for it.